guys, it's Nikki here. I'm here today to do my review for the nonfiction book Moneyball by Michael Lewis. As you can see, I have this really wonderful picture that I'm imposing over the video because I do not own a physical copy. I listened to this audiobook through my library and I just don't have anything to show you guys, so I'll use a digital image. I really enjoyed this book and it really surprised me since I'm not a huge sports fan. However, the book was written really well and it did a really good job kind of explaining the system used, and if nothing else, I love a story that tries to overthrow the system, and I love a story that you get to cheer for the underdog in. And I got to do both of those things, which was awesome. The book itself, if you're familiar, is a nonfiction retelling of what Billy Beane and Peter Brand tried to do with the Oakland Athletics in the early 2000s. They tried to build a team using statistics and not traditional scouting methods. And I have to say, that made for a really interesting read. I'm not going to do a character section like I normally do, so I'm just going to do an extended likes and dislikes section for you guys. Just because the nonfiction, it would be a lot harder to do characters since I'm talking about real people and I haven't done enough research into them to really feel like I could adequately talk about them. I'll move into my likes from here. My first like is the explanation of the sabermetric statistical method that they used. It was really well explained and the author did a good job of using layman's terms so you didn't have to get too caught up in the statistics of it. My second like was how the history of Billy Beane and Peter Brand was presented. It was given relevantly in terms of context, and you never got more than you needed in order to understand what was going on. So they didn't really do any info dumps, which was really awesome. My third like is the voice that the author used when he was talking about the present in the book, kind of like his part of the story where he's talking about how he's interviewing and what the situations were like while he was researching the book. I found that to be very relatable and very interesting. My fourth like is that you get to cheer for the underdog, sort of. It's one of my favorite sports tropes. With books and movies, like there's nothing I like more than cheering for the underdog, and it's just something I am a sucker for. And then my fifth like is that even though this was definitely aimed at people who enjoy baseball, I really felt that the book was written well enough and accessibly enough that anybody who is interested would be able to pick this up. And that's all I have for my likes. I'll jet into my dislikes here. My first dislike is that there's no real discussion about the weaknesses surrounding the sabermetric method. I mean, they touch on it here and there when people are bringing up like opposition to it, but for how much time the author spends explaining the method, I felt like we should get a little bit more in terms of why this method specifically won't work and why it's not going to change the face of baseball, even though it was very influential. My other negative is that the author doesn't know as much about baseball as he does about the statistics. And while that's not a big issue, I just noticed a few things here or there when he was talking about the baseball, and it wasn't as in-depth as similar parts of the book about the statistics were. But each person has their own strengths and weaknesses, and I do think he compensated pretty well for it, as there were only a few places in the book where I noticed that lacking. And then my third and final dislike is more about reviews surrounding the book than the book itself. The book itself, whenever I found, like many of the reviews I found, specifically tackled the issue of the sabermetric method. They didn't really talk about the book, how the sabermetric method was presented, how baseball was presented, how the story of Billy Beane and Peter Brand was presented. They tackled, well, baseball this way wouldn't be fun to watch. I don't like this book because it's promoting that. And it's like, that's not really what it was about, but hey, to each their own. I just found it a little irritating that when I was reading through reviews and I was looking specifically for negative reviews to see if there was something I missed, that was in a bunch of them, and I thought that was kind of weird. And that's all I have for dislikes. I'll move into my wrap-up here. With my wrap-up, I'm going to start with my rating. It's 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really, really enjoyed this book, like more than I've honestly expected to. And the only reason I'm giving it 4.5 instead of 5 is because I do feel like the book, the way it was written, really warranted a really good in-depth discussion about the weaknesses associated with the sabermetric method and why even though it was influential, it wasn't as revolutionary as they would have hoped, and baseball still doesn't use all of it. Aside from that, like I said, the book was nearly perfect. I really, really enjoyed it, and it's something that really anybody can pick up if they're interested, because it's well written, and you don't really have to understand baseball. You just have to be interested in the story that he's trying to tell. And with that, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!